Hello, Mohammed here from RTILA, and today we will be looking at one of the biggest pain points when you are a beginner starting to look at web automation. So it's not only a problem for using RTILA as a software, but basically for any activity that is about automation, scrapping, and all these things. And this pain point is really about what we call the locators. So today we will cover what these locators are. But before that, we will walk you through a reality check because you need to have the proper expectations. You need to understand the context. And then we will define and give some examples of what they are. And there are two types of them, CSS and xPATH. And then we will walk you through our selector feature and how it helps to find some or most of the locators. And for whatever remains that we cannot find with our selector, then we will share with you, especially what I use as a beginner, as a non-tech, what kind of tools and workarounds you can find to be able to break through and implement your automation. And finally, we will cover at the very end what we have in mind in terms of the way forward, what is the future, and how we think that in the future we can address this, and we will want to have some feedback from you. So let's jump into the next subject. Yes, so I was talking about a reality check, and this is not to an apology or lack on our side in terms of capacity. It's really like the context. What are we doing when we want to do web automation? And first of all, a small disclaimer, RTILA is just a tool. So it can do things. It can do good things. It can do bad things. It's really a tool, and we leave the compliance and the wisdom of how to use it to you. We're really here focusing on what it can do for good. And what is the context? So the context in web automation is that unless you're browsing your own website, your own e-commerce, or you get proper authorizations and so on, most of the time you will find like a natural resistance, a natural protection from many websites, because as you can see on the reCAPTCHA image here, many websites, they don't want robots, they don't want bots, they want to protect their systems and to protect their resources. So you're already sort of going against the current, depending on the website, and you have to be aware of that. So many websites have anti-bot policies, like you can see with the reCAPTCHA. Some websites have fair use policy. So even if you're not a bot, just as a human, if you use too much the service in 1 hour, like in LinkedIn, there's a certain number of connection that you can do in 1 hour, a certain number of searches that you can do in 1 hour. And those are even for human use. They call them fair use policy. You also have all these rules of privacy policy about the data and so on, and the limitations that come with it. And finally, sometimes they have concerns about intellectual property. So if there is creation, images, text that is under copyright, patent, or brand or trademarks, that's also a point that is genuinely brought forward and that we need to understand. So when you look at this context, then you can understand that the reality is not as easy when you want to do automation, because by the nature of this context, the selectors will not be a perfect science. You will have to work hard to find them and find them back, because they will change as a measure of protection or as a measure of optimizing a website. The locators change, the source code of the page changes, sometimes every week, sometimes every month, sometimes every 6 months or a year, depending on the website. So it's prone to change, and you have to understand that. So as a consequence, your automations, they may not last forever. And you have to really mentally be ready to invest again and again, because automations and their executions and even the results that you get, they really need a supervision. So they can relieve you from a lot of work, but it doesn't mean that it discounts you from completely leaving an automation unsupervised and unattended. You have to correct, you have to update, it's like few minutes here and there, and sometimes you get away with just 10 minutes a week, 10 minutes a month, and your automation can be there. But you have to be ready to do that. You can't expect a software or a tool to do everything for you. And generally what we advise as an approach, given that the context is sometimes not that easy, is that I think we have to take it on our side, guys, to have like a practical and ethical approach to this. Like if you're going to automate something, go slowly. don't go in savage mode, you know. RTILA is really stable, and you can like span an automation on the long term instead of taking too much resources in the short term and creating issues. So do responsible automation, go low intensity, and really think as if this was your website, this was your company website. You don't want that suddenly one user takes the resources of 100 or 1,000 users. That's the idea behind the ethical approach to automation. So don't overload the website. Maybe you can check a website how heavy it is, and from there you can deduct how much pressure you can put on it, even your own website. And also, it's not because you have an automation tool that you must automate every single little thing. There are things that you have to be open to do manually. So you could, for example, automate a whole flow, but the login side, you just put yourself a 10-second wait, and you log in by hand, and it gets the job done. If it's not worth the time of cracking the login step, you know, there's no harm and there's no shame about it, as long as we get the data and the work that is to be done. So these are the main principles that I think will give you a healthier approach and a more balanced understanding of what is RTILA and what is web automation in general. So let's now talk about the locators and what they are. The first thing that you have to understand is that the locators are elements of a language. They are part of a syntax. It's the syntax and the language that is building the web page that you see in front of you when you're visiting a website. So in the background, there is the source code. And again, today's tutorial is really about beginners or even very beginners. So we are not going to dive into the code itself. But what is good to know is that the meaning of CSS is cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets. What is it? It's a styling language. It really helps developers to design a web page, like how the button will look like. Does it have a border or not? Does it have a shadow? Is it a blue background with a white font? When you hover, is the background color changing? And all these things. So that's really a way of styling the look and feel of a web page. So what a CSS locator does is that it's going to recognize an element from the look of it inside the code. So it will recognize that you're looking for the red button that has a border and a shadow, and inside there is such and such text. So that's how the CSS locator, or what it is. Then you have the xPath. The xPath is another approach, is another method of locating an element. And xPath stands from XML path. You can just quickly Google XML, but it's a marking language. And it's called Extensible Markup Language Path if we do the whole thing xPath. So a markup language, you could look at it like a GPS coordinate, like a geolocation inside the source code of a page. So it will tell RTILA or any other tool that if you want to access this element, it's behind this tag and this tag and this tag, but before that tag. So it will give like a location, either a relative location to other elements or an absolute location. And we will give you some resources if you want to learn more about this. But this is essentially what these two types of locators are. And the question is like, why should I care? I'm not a programmer, and why do we need them? Because we are all here as entrepreneurs, as business people. We want to get the job done. So what you need to understand is that the locators are kind of the cornerstone of this kind of industry. So for any web automation or scrapping activity to work, they need to they need to have proper locator, otherwise they cannot act upon that element that you want to apply an automation to. So the locator, they help us really like to pinpoint, to go and really say, not the image that is on the front, but the image that is on the back. Not this text, but that text. So you can like pinpoint a specific element on a web page that to us as non-tech users, we don't understand that sometimes there are multiple layers that are happening in the code. And sometimes we think that visually we're clicking on element A, but actually we're clicking on element B, which is above that element in the source code, but appear the other way around from a visual perspective. So that's a little bit the confusion and the misunderstanding that can happen. And we just want you to know about that. And once you have the correct locator, then you can do whatever you want to that locator. You can click on it, you can extract the data, you can populate it, you can download it, you can do a lot of things for the purpose of your automation. And then also you may ask yourself, should I find the CSS locator or should I find the xPath? Which one is better? There's no single answer to this. It depends. But like the summary of what is the difference between CSS and an xPath is that the xPath is really like the ultimate locator. If you look at the functionalities it has, it can give you directions to that element from wherever you come from. So if you come from an ancestor element, that means an element that appears above your element, or whether you're coming from a child element, an element that appears within or beneath the element that you're targeting. XPath is the method that is kind of bidirectional. It can look for an element from both ways. CSS doesn't. It really can only look like from one level to the level beneath as a child. On the other hand, XPath, because it has to go through all the code of a page to build that GPS coordinate, any small change in the top of the page could actually break your XPath. So it's really prone to change. It's a bit fragile, but then it's very precise. CSS on that side, it's, let's say for beginners, it's a little bit easier to recognize. Let's say maybe we don't need to understand them, but we can at least recognize and understand what they do. And also we can understand what we want to do with them, what we can manipulate. So for non-developers, CSS, because we can recognize a color, we can recognize the word buttons and things like that, they tend to be a little bit easier, but not really a big difference. And in both cases, whether you use CSS or XPath as a method for locator, we often have multiple choices, multiple locators that could be used for the same element. And the idea here is to always find the tag or the locator that is the less likely to change. So if you see that there is a locator that looks like random, it may be a reference that changes every time you log in, or every month or every week, that may change. So you want to look at something that is stable and sustainable, that you think will stay in the code because it appears on the front end. So this is a little bit the background of what you need to know about CSS and XPath. We will give you some links if you want to dive in. There are plenty of YouTube and tutorials on this. You can really access the knowledge for free, but for the sake of building an automation on RTILA, this should be enough. If you understand this purpose, that's enough. So now our locator, so how we deal with the locators in RTILA, we have this tool that we call the Selector Feature. This Selector Feature appears in our two panels. We have the inspection panel, which is here on the left, but also we have the automation panel. So both of them, they use our Selector Feature to find the element that you want to apply automation to. So in the automation panel, you can interact with an element. So interaction means clicking, saving, double clicking, downloading. All these actions, like look at them almost like mechanical actions, are done in the automation panel. And in the inspection panel, what it does is that once you find the locator, it allows us to capture the data of that locator. So be it a URL of an image, be it a text, be it a value in a drop-down or a checkbox list. This is what allows us, this is what the inspection panel allows us to do once we find the right locator. So this is a little bit how it works, and probably the best way is to give you a live demo. And before I give you the live demo, there is an assumption that we need to calibrate, is that sometimes when we use an automation tool, we think that the automation tool is going to get everything right in 100% of the cases, but that's not the reality. The reality is that as it stands right now, our selector feature can catch between 50 to 90% of all the elements you need, which is already a good fit, and we're always working hard to make it better. But that's the success rate that it does. So you will need to work a little bit more on it. And this tutorial today is to show you and demystify how to actually solve those small limitations that are left. So let's take an example. Let's take actually a hard example. We're going to look at Indeed, the job portal, because they have some limitations and some challenges. So it's good to try on that on that kind of website. Many other websites, it's actually very easy, and you can get 100% of the elements, especially if it's a WordPress website, Shopify, or other stable systems that we know about. So let's look at Indeed. So I'm just going to do a very simple example. I want to grab all the software engineers jobs listing and their information that are available in New York. And you can see that I have the page here. So I will just copy this URL, and then I will browse through all these jobs here to get their data. And there is an important point that we need to remember, is that before even you do the automation, you need to kind of understand the website that you're dealing with, because sometimes between different entries, some data is there, some data is not there. And what you have to do is that you have in advance to take the most complete example of the entries, so that you can create all the properties and all the containers to catch those data. So for example, you can see here that sometimes there is just the location, sometimes there is the salary that appears here on the top. Sometimes you have shifts, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have employment benefits, and some other times you don't have them. So you have to look through and identify what is the most exhaustive listing that I can use. So you can see here that this one has the benefits but doesn't have the salary here on the top. This one has the salary on the top here, but then no benefits. So that will not be my perfect example to build my automation. So you have to go and find that specific entry that has the most elements, and we will get there. And there's none here. This one has, so you see this one has the salary and it has the job type, but it's missing the company benefits. Let's try to find another one. Okay, then in that case, don't be lazy. Go the next page and force yourself to really like go and find that best example. So let's go here more. This full-time. Okay, this is good. So you see this one, Java software engineer. We have pretty much everything. And I'm going to actually copy this URL. So it has here the salary, it has the location, it has the benefits, and then the full job description that's easy to find. It's almost everywhere. So you got the point. This would be my most exhaustive example on which I'm going to build the next steps. Now let's go and let's go into RTILA and catch these values. Okay, so I have loaded that specific URL on RTILA here. I just went into the URL, I pasted it here and I hit enter. So now I have that complete example that we just talked about. And you can see that this is what I want. So I want to grab the location, which is, it's getting it here, New York, and then the job title, Java software engineer. And then I'm grabbing the salary and I'm grabbing the benefits. And you can see that it's catching it, but this is after I did some tweaking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I failed first, and then show you how I came about it and to have a clean result like this. So let's go here, and first let's use RTILA selector. So when you use RTILA selector, you create a property, which is a container for the data, and then you click on CSS selector, and I want to catch the job location. So once I click on CSS selector, I can go and highlight the location, which is New York. And when I click on it, the way that our locator works, our inspector works, is that it highlights elements in yellow that you want, but here you can clearly see that it highlights almost everything, and it finds 631 elements that are using this div. So what you can do is click on the other elements that you don't want, and it starts to reduce the number to 113. And then also I don't want this. Now we are at 17. And also I don't want this. And now I start to have still 17. So something else is still being selected. by our selector automatically. And sometimes you're going to find those elements that are selected, and you can click again on them and deselect them. They may be here actually. So you see now I have 8. So I'm making progress, but it's not good enough progress. Even if I go down here, I remove this. Now I have 2. So I did a good cleaning, but you can see that I still have 2 elements when I should only have 1. So it's catching New York, but it's also catching the job details, and I don't want these job details because it breaks my data. But it's okay. This is the limitation of the tool. At least we went this far. And in the next step, we will show you how we address this limitation and how we can actually find the right selector using some other tools. So this is what I wanted to show you, how our selector works. So it's a point and click method, like I said. And then for any elements that is over selected or that you don't want, you just click again on those elements until you get away with them, and you have either the one result that you want, or sometimes you want the 8 image products that appear on a page, then you should have 8 occurrences. So that's how it works. It works for, let's say, 50 to 90% of the cases. And as you could see on Indeed, it doesn't work that well. And that leads us to the other tools and workarounds, because this is very frustrating when you cannot find the locator. It kind of blocks your work. So after a couple of months or years of going around and trying not to call a developer, not to call the team to help me solve, for beginners there is a way to go about it. But what you have to understand is that there is no perfect tool. There is no 100% success solution as of today in the market. You will need to put a bit of effort, a bit of time, and you need motivation. So there are a few tools, and the one that we are presenting here today is mainly Google Chrome extensions, because also we built RTILA to use Chrome X as a basis. So they are here, these tools on the right side that I will present to you one by one. There are more than 3, but these are, let's say, the 3 that I got a better result with quickly. But before you use the locator, you have to remember what I just showed you earlier, is that you have to make sure that you're on the page that has the most extensive content, the most extensive elements. Otherwise, you will not realize, you will think that the locator is not working, and actually it's not the locator that is not working, is that the data, that specific data on that specific page is just absent, like the salary is not there. So therefore the locator is good, but since the salary is not on that page that you're viewing right now, you get an empty result. So you have to understand that to avoid non-existing problems in a way. And you saw that on Indeed and on many websites, the pages and the listings are not homogeneous. So you may have a listing that has 10 elements, you may have another listing that has 7, another one that has 8. The idea that they use is that if they don't have the data about the job, then they don't display that field altogether. Yet you need to know about every field that you need to cache, so that for the 30% of those listings that would have that information, you don't miss it. That's the whole idea. It takes a bit of time to grasp this, and that's why we're trying we insist and we highlight it here, so that you get the best data quality out of your work. And then, like I said, there's more than 3 tools. So sometimes you may ask yourself which tools I should choose, or which results I should choose, because a single tool can also give you like 3, 4, 5 different locators, and it's up to you to select which locator you want to use. And how it works is that usually you right click on an element on a page, and after you right click, you go into the tool, and the tool will tell you there is this xPath and that xPath, there is this CSS and that CSS. It has this many occurrences. I will show you. So simple rules. First, you have to go for the locator that has the right number of occurrences. So let's say you're browsing an e-commerce website that has 8 products, and you want to cache the image. Then you should have 8 occurrences of that image field, not 12, not 4, not 1. If it's 1, it's probably the logo. If it's more than 8, it's probably the other images, which are like featured products or some other products that display at the bottom of the page. The second principle that you need to apply is that the locators, they have different elements in them. They have different tags, different nomenclatures, different IDs, and you want to go with the ID or the tag that looks the less like gibberish. So if you see some tags in that CSS selector that is x12vz, that means that it's probably going to change the next time you log in. But if you see a tag that has button, customer interface, you know, something that has a bit of a semantic, then it's more likely that it's going to stay there. Finally, when you can, sometimes it's not possible, but when you can, go for the locator that is the shortest. Sometimes you're going to have some locators that are really like a paragraph and that really will pinpoint that element very precisely. But then the more element you use to pinpoint a specific element, then if one of them is missing, then the probability of that locator breaking is high. So the shorter you have, the best it is, then you're less exposed to little changes in the page. So these are a little bit the principles. We will now go and look at the tools that I told you about. Okay, so the first tool we're going to use is Selectors Gadget. And remember, we have a problem that we're supposed to have only one result to catch the location, which is New York. And I don't want this second result that breaks my data flow. So how it works is that as a Chrome extension, you just launch the page and then you install the Chrome extension, and I will move my camera here, and you launch Selector Gadget. And as you can see here, it's going to create this bottom bar that will allow you to find the CSS or the xPATH, and you will see that it's very similar to our selector on RTILA. We use the same technology, which is about highlighting, clicking, and then re-clicking again. So let's try with this tool. Sometimes it gets it better because we have like a bigger space to manipulate. So I click and it selects too many, 667, that's too many. I click to unselect, we're 113. I remove this background here, we're at 45. I remove this one, we're at 17. I don't want the reviews, we're at 7. And then I don't want this section. Up, we find one result. This is a good sign, because if it's only one result with this CSS locator, then I will always get the location only and nothing else. So let's try it out, because sometimes you get a selector on a tool, but then it doesn't necessarily work on RTILA. So let's just go and try it out now. So you see I have two results here, which is not good. This is the initial selector that I got with RTILA, and now I remove it, I paste the new one, and it should get me, yes, you see now we get New York, and we no more have the second useless result that we used to have before. And the other data, there seemed to be an issue, because maybe the fact that we use this selector is somehow impacting the other selectors. Sometimes it's also an RTILA issue. So I create a new property. Yes, so that was a display issue. We will solve it in coming versions, but sometimes to force RTILA to go and catch again the data, you just click on creating a new property and then you remove it again, and then it goes back to that page and catch it. So yes, we solved the problem. You see that this is one method that was pretty easy, and it's very similar to RTILA, and now we got the job done. But you could also use the other tools. So for example, if I go back to the initial value, or let's just do it again. If I use the selector from RTILA and we do the same thing, I remove what I don't want. Let's go, not this, and then the best we can do is that we're gonna get two results. So you see, that's our limitation again. We're back to that same limitation because RTILA find this particular CSS selector, which is not the best. So let's look at other tools that could help us do the same job. And I'll go back to Google Chrome. I disable Selector Gadget, and now let us use SelectorsHub. So with SelectorsHub, you have two ways. You can launch it here from the extensions panel, or you can actually, sometimes it's easier, you can go on that element here, New York, right click, click inspect, or even use the shortcut here. And you can directly copy actually those values if you don't want to open the inspector. But remember, if we want to choose the best locator possible, so we need to look at them. And to look at them, that's where you click inspect, and then here in this toggle you click and you will see all the other tools that we have. So I want to use SelectorsHub, and now you see SelectorsHub went and did some work in the background and find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options for me. All of them, they have only one occurrence, which means that I will only get one data, which is good. You can see that contrary to Selectors Gadget, it didn't even grab the other 600 things that we don't want. And then if you zoom in, if you, let's say you want this, so let me explain to you very quickly what are the differences. And there is a full training for free that you can access with Hub Selector. First, there is a relative selector. So it's a selector, a CSS selector that is in position compared to another relative standpoint. If I try to oversimplify it. Then you have the relative xPath. Again, it's the xPath relative to another location. You have the index xPath, which is probably the full. You have some jQuery, which we are not using. So you see, it gives you at least 3 elements that we could use in between us. So when you click relative CSS here, you can see that it's a bit long, but it's very precise. And if you click relative xPath, it will give you another value that you can use. Now for our case, we're interested in the CSS selector, and there's only one, and you have here the little copy icon. I want this one. Let's see if this one does the job as well. So I copied it already, and I'm going to go back to RTILA, and this is the selector that is giving us 2 results, which is not good. And now I'm going to put the new selector I got from SelectorsHub, and you can see that immediately it's catching the right element. That said, it's longer than the selector I got from Inspector Gadget. So in these rare cases, Inspector Gadget is giving us a better result. But in my experience, SelectorsHub often come up with the best solution because they give you just so much more opportunity. So that's for SelectorsHub. We can also give a try to a third tool, just for you guys to see that there are many options. So I'll go back to the page. I'm going to close the inspector, and I'm going to do the same thing. Let's reload the page so that we have a clean page. Okay, we're back into the same job portal, and this time I'm going to do the same. I'm going to right click here and inspect, and I'm going to use another tool, the third tool, which is here, Ranorex Selocity. Let's see what it gives us. So it looks a little bit different, but it's actually doing pretty much the same job. Again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 possibilities. All of them are giving us one occurrence, so it looks good. And again, you have the relative xPath, you have the xPath itself, and then you have a CSS, and you have 2 CSS. One is using this way of writing, and this one is using another way, which is shorter. You see, this one is shorter. So I'm interested in the shorter version first. I'm going to copy this option. I don't even understand what's going on there. But it's okay if it allows me to do the job. Let's see if this is going to solve our issue. I paste it here, and as you can see, it's not pulling the right data, but it could be just a refreshing issue. So I'll do that trick. And no, it's really that this selector is not getting us, it's catching the salary instead of the job location. So that's not what I want. Let me go back there. So this CSS is short, but then it's too short. It's confusing with another selector. Let's use this one on the top, which is longer. I click to copy it. I'll go back to RTILA. Let's use it now here. And let's see, it's a bit longer. And let's see if it's doing the job. Let's refresh. Let's see if it's not RTILA doing. So as you can see in this example, unfortunately, we were not able to get the right selector using Ranorex. So Selector Gadget and SelectorsHub, they allowed us to find the right selector. Okay, so we have seen how we could solve our little problem. And just like the life lesson tell us, when there is one problem, there is at least two solutions or even more. So you could see that with Selectors Gadget and SelectorsHub today, and in this particular example, they got us the job done. On other websites, it would have been RTILA doing it immediately without any help. On another one, it would have been Ranorex and not the other two. So at least 2, 3, 4 tools you need to try out to get the job done. But this is good news because at least as a non-developer, you can finalize you can finalize your automation and then really like solve 90-95% of all the problems yourself. And then sometimes when you have that little 5%, that little 1%, you have built almost the whole automation, and you can call a specialist, a programmer or something. They know what you want to do, they know where you're blocking, and they can solve it in a couple of minutes. So it's really a very valuable effort to do as a non-coder and go through these selectors things. And the more you select, the more you get into routines and habits, and the more you start to recognize the things, even you don't understand the programming language, you start to recognize what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes you add a point here, and you will see that you will gather a bit of experience as you go on the way. But hopefully this can show you and build you some confidence on how to use RTILA and finalize your automations. We also have some more good news, is that really we have Sanjay that has a fantastic community-oriented business that is SelectorsHub. He's really empowering a lot of developers and a lot of testers with solving this problem of locators. And we have a bit of help from Sanjay and team. So if you want to try and use the free version of SelectorsHub, which is the one that I use today and does most of the job, that's free. And if you want to go like the next level, it's really ridiculously cheap. For $2.5 a month, you get the pro version. We leave the link for you here to go and enjoy it. This is the too low price. There is no possible discount. We asked for it for you guys, but we couldn't get. It's really like bottom rock. We also invite you to check the YouTube channel of SelectorsHub. It's really rich. It's a wealth of trainings, and there is a whole course, a free course on CSS selectors. If you want to dive in and become more and more experienced in this, it's in there. You just have to invest your time. And also for those of you guys who want to equip your team with the pro version of SelectorsHub, Sanjay was nice and kind to give us a small 10% discount for you guys for the team. So instead of $600, you can get it for $540 a year for 10 people, and they're equipped with the pro version, and they can even organize some team webinar and things like that. Now, in case you still have some CSS and xPath gangsters that are troubling you, you can call Sanjay. He has this service for $50 for 30 minutes, and surely will find for you the selector. And sometimes, it's just worth it, because an automation may save you 100 of hours or 200 hours of work per week, per month. And paying one hour of work for one specialist, it's really worth it. But before you do that, and so that this can be cost effective for you, use the techniques that I showed you, even as a non-developer, so that you go through all the other problems, and you're left really with the critical problem that is beyond your capacity, but that you can solve for very cheap. Either call upon your colleague that has a bit of CSS, HTML knowledge and stuff, or call a specialist. So this is the links are all in the file here. We will share the PDF as well in the description. Now let's look at what's the future, because here we have some good ideas. We know that we have certain limitations at the moment. We have some workarounds, but then how are we planning and how are we investing in solving this for the long term? We have basically two options that we are working on, and we want your feedbacks and votes. If you can upvote one or another, you comment. But the first one is the AI locator. So you've heard about GPT and all the work that OpenAI is doing. So we have now the possibility with the RTILA v6, with our API, we can call an external AI to do some job for us inside of RTILA. So the idea is that we're starting to to build and to train an AI model that can kind of parse the whole HTML code of the page, and then we just tell it, get me the phone number. There's only one of it on this page. Go and find me the selector, and then the AI will do all these trials and errors and stuff until it finds or doesn't find that element and selects it for you. So that's one way. That's the AI doing the job for us, and we all of us together, when we do mistakes, we're teaching the AI, and as we go in a couple of months, in a year, or whatever it takes, we would have built together an AI model that can get us between 80 and 99%, let's say, of the locators for us. That's the one way. We're going to do it anyway, and this will be available for free within RTILA, so that you guys can save time. But like, let's say for the 1% remaining or the 10% remaining of the automations that you're just blocked because of one locator, we're thinking, just like the example of Call Sanjay, we're thinking to train, certify, and equip a team of expert locators that you could like kind of call from within RTILA while you're stuck in a particular place, window or locator. Then you could click start a live session, a remote session. You show to our expert what's going on. They get what you mean. They go, they find the locator, and they tell you, okay, use this locator or this XPath. Let's test together, get the data. And then you solve your problem, and then we put a 100% result guaranteed or a refund. So the idea here is that we all see a lot of opportunities with RTILA and automation. And sometimes we may spend 10 hours, 2 weeks trying to find a solution that maybe we don't have the capacity to access. And that's what we think, like, can we get a team that you can call upon every time you're stuck, you don't have time, you want to make money. So time is money, money is time. Then we can together study a reasonable pricing and so on. And that's the idea, is to really have a couple of people around the clock, 24 hours a day, at least in English, that can provide this human-powered locator service. This is about it, guys, for today. I hope it was accessible enough for beginners. And if it was not precise enough, or if it was not clear enough, please drop us comments, drop us tickets on rtila.com/support. And also follow us on YouTube, subscribe, visit us on rtila.com, join our Facebook group. And we're happy to see you breaking through the headache that are the locators. Thank you for your attention, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Thank you.